Today we're going to be working on the 40 series. We're going to be doing the wheel bearings and swivel hubs, and I'll just be giving you the run through of how to assemble it and disassemble it. So it won't be exact specs and everything. You can find out all that stuff online, but it'll just give you an idea of what's involved and what needs to be taken apart in what order. To show you how easy it really is, because the main cost involved in getting someone to do this is just because of the labour, because it's about 6 hours a side. The parts only actually cost, with wheel bearings and swivel hubs, is only about $100 for both sides. So it'll take you about 12 hours of your time, but that's why it costs so much. It can cost up to $400 to $500 a side, I think the mechanics charge. So you'll definitely save yourself a lot of money. So I've done this a few times now, but I remember the first time was real slow and confusing. You'd mess up and not sure what order things go in. So I thought this would be a good video to show people what exactly goes on and how to put it on. And this also applies for pretty much any swivel hubs, like Patrols and Landcruisers. They're all pretty much the same concept. So just a few small changes, but it's the same idea. So let's jack it up, put it on a stand and make sure it's all safe, and we'll get started. So as you can see, I've already replaced the tie rods in, so I've already pulled this one off. But in order to get this one off, it's got a tapered bush sort of thing, so it'll jam in there. So the best way to do it is get one of these tools from Super Cheap or Repco or whatever. They're only 30 bucks, but it's a lot better than using a hammer. Like everyone seems to just say bash it with the hammer, but it's just so much harder than you just put this on, give it a twist until it eventually pops, and then it just pops it straight off and saves damage and anything around here. So definitely worth spending whatever it is, $30, $40 I think they are. And you always have it for next time. And then next up, we've got to take off the drums, which obviously newer cars have disc brakes now, but if you've got drums still, you'll just have to notice on the back there's a little hole, and you just wind back the brake pads and releases the drum. So then this will just pull straight off, and then you can get into everything. So once we pull the locking hub off the front, there's a circle clip in here that you've got to pull off before this outer casing can be taken off. So it's just to use your little pliers and try and lever it out. It can be pretty difficult. Oh, it's a lot easier than usual. So now this isn't meant to happen, it's just the nut seized onto the stud. That doesn't matter, you can still screw that back in. They're meant to just come out like that. And then next up, you just got the cone washers in here. So they're little funny little washer things, and that holds it on. So you just got to hit them around. Till they eventually pop. There they are. So it's a very messy job. You're going to need heaps of rags. There's grease and oil everywhere, because usually like this one, the diff oil seal has come through and it's mixed with the grease, so it's all just dripping and gross. So you're just going to clean it up till you get to your locking nut for your wheel bearing. And your locking nut has sort of bent in flanges that go around the nut, so it locks the locking nut in for your wheel bearing. So all you got to do is tap them open. It's only got one. And then another tool to buy, it's only pretty cheap. So it's just like a big socket, which a lot of people like this person's done. I'll show you after when we get it off. They've actually used a screwdriver and just bashed it, which is not real good for it. And see, now this socket doesn't fit on because they've done that. So you just do it their way, because we're going to replace these anyway. And that means they haven't been able to get this proper torque spec on the actual wheel bearing preload. So they've just done it to when it felt right, which is also bad. That's a locking nut. It's got little fins on it that hold the nut in place so it doesn't sort of spin around. There's and that's the main bearing preload nut. So the other nut, then you do that to this proper spec to hold it on, then the other one sits on there and holds it on so it can't move at all. It's holding that on. There's the other spacer on there. Wheel bearing. And that's it, that's the bearing carrier. I'll show you how to replace the bearings in that afterwards. Nice and greasy. So this is just a little junction box thing off another brake line I had, so I'm just using it as a blocker because I've taken this line off. So then we can take this whole thing off. This is leaking a little bit, but it'll just slow it down so I won't lose all my brake fluid. Oh, Jesus. Okey-dokey. So now we're going to remove the swivel hub housing thing, which is just 4 bolts here and 4 bolts onto here, which hold the steering bearings in and just holds the whole thing in. So once you pull them off either way, it'll open up and the whole front will just slide off. And you just got to remove your old swivel hub bolts out of there and pull that off and it'll just fall off. Alright. These ones also have cone washers like the front of the hub. So same thing, you just got to beat them. Oh. Just tap them until they pop out like that. And so these 4 bottom ones, they don't have cone washers, just the normal bolts and washers. And then it's released. except it seems that it's jammed into the actual swivel hub bearing. So it's loose, but it's stuck in the bearing. So that's where this one also comes in handy to use to try and pop it off. So you just work your way around each bolt. It should slowly come until it pops. That one was easier. So you want to keep track of these shims. There's only one on the bottom, and there's only one on the top, when usually there's a couple of different sizes, thicker or thinner ones. They're both the same thickness. Now just take the back swivel hub, it's like the steel and the rubber off and the felt. That's the swivel hub bearings, 2 of them. You don't need any of those bits and pieces, just throw them all out. Kit should have them all in there. Then we've got to replace the seal, the diff oil seal, because obviously it's been leaking, mixed with the grease. So you pull your shaft out. You can see all the way there's grease and oil in there. Needs to be cleaned out. You should always do it anyway, just because they do wear out and you might as well do the job instead of having to take the whole thing off and stuff around. It's a lot easier to do it now than later. So the easiest way I reckon is just to use a screwdriver and a hammer. You just punch the outside of the seal. It collapses. And grab onto it with some pliers. Because we're replacing the bearings, we replace the races as well, which is this outer steel ring. So you first do the bottom ones, there's a little keyhole. Tap it side to side until it comes out. Same upside down. Now that's fully stripped down and ready to clean up. It's good to see it's all still smooth, not rusty and pitted. So don't have to smooth that out or anything so it doesn't tear up the felt. It should be all good to go. If it is all rough and sort of rusty, you just give it a light sand. So now we've got to remove the old bearings and the races. So first we've got to remove the rear main seal for the bearing in the hub to stop dirt and grease and whatever getting in. So the best way is just to bash it out and crumble it in until you can pull it out. Then there's an outer ring that needs to be replaced because it gets worn down by the bearing, so they come as a set. So you've got to remove this ring inside. So first we'll remove the front one by punching it from this side. There's little notches. You line up in there. And I find you go one side and then the other side. So that's it, it's called the bearing racer. Just sort of wears down inside there, so you've got to replace them both at the same time. So now we do the back one, the bigger one. Same thing. All right, and that's it.